Welcome to the show. It's your girl Sarah and Hiba here. We're here to, have an amazing conversation with you with regard to the price that anti-vaxxers are paying. All right, you're tuned into Relax Radio and you're tuned into the Sunrise. And Hiba and I are here to actually make sure that we keep you entertained. We have a lot of conversation for you all the way until 9 a.m. All right. Having said that, I want to very quickly remind you before we head into our conversation to text us on 078 share your thoughts, share your opinions with us because we would love to hear it. Right now, you can also follow us on our socials, which Hiba will tell you. Hiba, why don't you tell everyone about the socials that the people can follow us on?
Yeah, you guys can drop us a line on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok if you want to hear more.
Yeah, and you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that way, you can always make sure that you're updated and you're informed about the very latest in terms of, everything that we're going to be talking about. All right. So don't forget to do that. And also, don't forget to download our app, which is available on both the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store. All right. Which means you can listen in from anywhere in the world at any time of the day. Share your thoughts, share your ideas, and let us know what you're thinking. All right. So, Hiba, why don't you tell everyone about the topic that we're going to be discussing today? And why exactly it's so important?
Today, we're going to be talking about the price that anti vaxxers obviously pay. I feel like it's an important topic to talk about because over the last year, since the beginning of lockdown, anti vaxxers have become a rising movement, so to speak. We've had anti vax protests, we've had people trying to stop vaccinations altogether, we've had absolutely so many people just going against the vaccine. And really, it's not only harming us, but it's also harming the anti-vaxxers. There have been multiple reports of people dying because of the fact because they refused to seek treatment when they've contracted COVID. They are refusing to get the vaccine, and ultimately, it is completely spiraling.
Yeah, yeah, that's really true as well, right? And that's why Hiba and I actually want to start off this session by sharing a few stories of anti-vaxxers. I've read a few stories as well, and that's why I want to share some of those stories with you because I want to, or rather, we want to help you understand how exactly this is a big problem, right? I mean, sure, it's very easy for us to come and have this conversation. Look, every time I'm on Instagram, every time I'm on Facebook, and I'm sure Hiba can relate as well. Every time we're scrolling our social media, we're having all of these, like, even if it's funny, right, even if it's just for the sake of a meme, we're still seeing like anti-vax memes and whatnot, right? And the truth is, even though you're trying to make a joke out of it at that point, it's only later that you begin to realize how much of an impact that it really has, right? Because all of these memes, because all of these news, these fake news actually that exist, it contributes to anti-vaxxers, eventually dying or getting into very serious critical conditions. All right. So, Hiba, what exactly have you heard recently? Have you heard any stories recently of anti-vaxxers who passed away from COVID-19 or they went into really critical conditions because of COVID-19?
Yeah, so we have this story of Cambridge educated and solicitor Leslie Lawrence, who recently passed away from COVID after contracting it. However, what we later found out was that he was uploading vlogs, completely denouncing the vaccine. He would brush it off almost. His partner, would say he completely brushed it off. And in addition to this, she also contracted COVID. And
Yeah.
because he was an educated man, she would believe everything he said. And he would constantly say things like, it's not a big deal. It's just a little flu. You're going to get
Yeah.
over it. It's not that big of a deal. However, unfortunately, he passed away from COVID. And it's stories like that. However, I don't think stories like that aren't unique. Especially over the last year, I think,
Yeah.
yeah, Leslie was definitely one of many, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really true because I heard about that story as well, and from what I read on it and whatnot, he was so adamant on saying that it was that vaccines were in fact just some experiment and it actually didn't work, right? I mean, I read the article too, and I saw he was very very adamant on telling people, look, you know what, they're just doing that because they want to track you, or some of these very common claims that anti-vaxxers
Yeah.
have with regard to with regard to getting the vaccine. They say that it's it's going to track you, or it's going to basically infringe on your sense of privacy, infringe on your freedom and whatnot. And that, it in fact, is a very terrible mindset to have. Right now, another story I heard was, there was this that was a set of twins. Obviously,
Mm.
I was just going to say two twins, and then I realized, look, you can't really say two twins, right? But they were twins. And what happened was, so the sister, her family, her daughter, their mother, everyone got vaccinated, right?
Mm.
But the brother refused to get vaccinated because he was like, you know what, I'm fit, I'm healthy. This guy, he's really fit, so he mountain climbs, he goes on runs and whatnot. So he
Yeah.
was like, oh, you know what, I don't need to get vaccinated. But then he did test positive for COVID. And throughout the weeks that he tested positive, his situation just increasingly got worse, right? Because the truth is, this is what we discussed yesterday as well. When you are vaccinated, when you have protection, you actually have a much higher chance of surviving the vaccine, right? And we spoke about this yesterday, and we saw
Yeah.
how, vaccines have actually increased your antibodies by 3 times the amount you normally have, right? So in instances like that, it's actually very, very dangerous for them to not get that vaccine. It's dangerous for them to have these sort of ideologies, right? So that's what it is. However, we're going to head into a small break now, and we will be talking more about this. But until then, make sure you stay tuned.
Again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, you've had one to forget, God, there'd be an inquest. Me, why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son.
I want to talk about, how the generation gap, has how much it's changed, especially when you check the youth nowadays in comparison, to people back in the day.
I'd say when I was younger, it was more disciplined. Not now.
In comparison to now.
Not at all. Not now. The way things are nowadays, the younger generation, you seem that they can't accept the word no. If that makes sense.
They can't accept rejection, essentially, is all you're trying to say.
Yeah, they can't accept the word no. So if you, how did I do? Well, you didn't do very well. And they get upset, And when I was a youngster, my father used to say to me, because I used to be sport mad when I was very young. Well, I still am sport mad, but like participating in different sports. And if I had a bad game, for example, he might say to me, you had one to forget. That's it.
Your dad sounds like a smart guy. I mean, damn, that's the real fact of the matter, yeah.
He'd say to me, you had one to forget. Get over it. And that was it. So I'd dust myself down and do it again. But now, if you say to a child, if I went up to a child and said, you've had one to forget, God, there'd be an inquest. An inquest. Me. Why did you reject my son? Well, I haven't rejected your son. Or daughter. I've just told them that they need to buck their ideas up.
That's the truth right there. I mean, if you think about it, if you check the generations, like right now in the US as well, I've seen a lot of these things as well. In the UK, you get medals for participation. But what's the point? What are you trying to? Yeah, what's the point? Either you win or you lose. People are so afraid to put that whole notion of losing. When it comes to right now, the generation gap is just crazy. How much a lot has changed. Social media has taken control of our lives, and we don't even realize it anymore. We're crippled because of it.
That's absolutely right, Nick. Because, as you said, nowadays it seems that you get rewarded for failure. For the life of me, Nick, I can't get my head around that. Perhaps I'm just getting old and morbid, I don't know. I just can't get my head around how you could be rewarded for failure.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the Sunrise Show with me and your girl Sarah. If you guys want to be a part of our discussion, drop us a line and text us on 078 52 473 473. And you can also follow us on our social medias. We've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to get a further look into the show and all the different shows we have, download the app, now available on Apple and the Google
Android. Yeah.
and
Yeah,
Android,
so yeah, if you want to really get in touch with us, make sure you download the app, because we would love to hear what you have to say. We would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this. So, make sure you do that. All right. But now let's actually head back into our conversation, because we're talking about the price that anti-vaxxers are paying. And earlier we were, just sharing a few stories about people, or anti-vaxxers rather, that lost their lives, who were in critical conditions because of because of the fact that they didn't want to get the vaccine. All right, so we're going to continue that conversation, and we're going to make sure that you understand this at the end of the day as well, right?
Yeah. So, Sarah, I actually have some questions for you. I just wanted to ask you, amid everything that's going on, what do you think is really leading to this surge in anti-vaxxers?
For me personally, I believe that a lot of it is due to the lack of information that we have, and also
Yeah.
something I feel like has a huge impact was the fact that a lot of world leaders, and I'm
Yeah.
referring to people like Donald Trump and even Boris Johnson at the beginning of the pandemic, they were very reluctant to actually accept and tell how the or rather they were reluctant to come to terms with how grave the pandemic was, right? And I feel
Yes.
like more often than not, they actually underestimated the gravity of the pandemic, because you had so many instances. When Donald Trump was literally just like, oh, what, if you drink some sanitizer, you're probably going to be like safe. And someone like a president saying that kind of thing is like probably the worst way to go about it, because a president is essentially someone you look up to, right? And you kind of assume that the president is in has the ability to make smart enough statements, or smart enough things. They say things that are smart enough that doesn't really mislead most of the population, right? And I feel like a lot of that anti-vax movement initially started from Britain, not Britain rather, but from the United States of America, right? Because when even your president goes on and says stuff like this, it's very easy for people to then start coming up with their own theories, right? And I think that was the same here as well, because Boris Johnson was very reluctant to actually, tell that the virus was quite bad when it initially began. There was a lot of misinformation. And also, the fact of the matter is, our government wasn't really clear on what exactly we needed to do and what we didn't need to, what we didn't have to do. Because at one point they were saying one thing, and then a few days later they would completely change it, right? So this lack of information and this constantly going between one thing and the other actually led to a lot of, or rather, there was a lack of clarity in terms of what they were actually saying, right?
Yeah. I'm so sorry about that.
my god.
So sorry about that. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think we've also got to think about the growing vaccine hesitancy, especially around the COVID vaccine. We've got people saying things like, I've already got COVID. I don't need to get it again. I've already, we've also had, I think, a really growing movement in which there were a lot of rumors going around saying that the COVID-19 vaccine or COVID-19 itself could actually affect a woman's fertility, which is completely not true. We've got to look at it from, I think, a different perspective. There are so many rumors. I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay.
There are so many rumors that are fueling anti-vaxxers, such as, I think, Kay Shum. I can't really say her last name, but she goes by Kate. So this ex-NHS nurse who is now an anti-vaxxer, who was popularized through the anti-vaxxer rally in Trafalgar Square.
Yeah.
So what do you think her message, especially since she is comparing NHS staff to Nazis, how do you feel her message is really affecting both the younger and the older generation, and especially those who are really hesitant about the vaccine and about COVID?
Yeah, here's the thing, right? I feel like, as okay, especially if you're someone who used to work in that field of medicine, if I mean, come on, right now at this point of time, it's the medical officers, all these nurses, these doctors who are in fact the front line in terms of battling the virus, right? So it
Absolutely.
is very, very problematic when someone who used to work in the NHS just comes up here and says something like that, and essentially, compares it to the Nazis, because we know when you talk about the Nazis that that was just a genocide, right? That is
Mm.
just taking it way out of how the situation actually is, right? Sure, I understand that you might not necessarily agree, and you might not necessarily like want to follow some other rules and regulations that are in place, right? And that's fine, because look, at the end of the day, as much as you want people to follow these rules and regulations, you can't really force people to do whatever they don't want to do, right? However, in that instance, they also need to, people like Kate actually need to make sure, or not just her, but I feel like there needs to be some sort of system in place here in Britain as well, where you can't get away with saying things like that. Because what we're seeing right now is you have a lot of these anti-vaxxers, and they're just sprouting out lies, right? You have a lot of them sprouting out misinformation and fake news, and they really don't have any punishment, any form of like proper punishment, and that
Mm.
makes it easy for them to say something ridiculous and get away with it, right? Which I think is another thing that we need to address as well. Yeah.
Of course, yeah. So, in regards to a recent article written, how do you think this is going to affect us? So, anti-vaxxers are now pretending to be vegans in order to escape vaccine regulations in the workplace. Now, I understand sometimes people will not get the vaccine for religious reasons, for health issues. That can be understood. Some people go vegan because of health issues or just personal life choices. However, this new conflict, do you think it's gonna really deter a lot of people around the world from getting the actual vaccine?
Ultimately, I think it boils down to whether you actually want to protect yourself or not, honestly.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I get it. Sometimes when you have made the choice to be vegan, it completely goes against all of those beliefs that you have to go and get the vaccine. However, you also need to keep in mind that at the same time, it's not like you can survive this pandemic without a vaccine. Because what we're seeing right now is a pandemic just getting worse and worse and worse every day. Like, I don't know if I was telling you this, but recently there was the Delta Plus variant as well,
Yeah.
right? And this is in addition to the Delta variant, to the Beta variant, and in addition to these variants that already exist, we have like Plus and like Max and whatnot. It's almost like a new release. It's almost sounds like a new release of a line of phones, because you have like Delta, then you have Delta Plus. Like,
Yeah.
no, I don't want any more pluses or minuses. You know what I mean? Um, so I think in the long term, this all depends on how you're going to deal with this kind of again, this all depends on how you're going to deal with misinformation, deal with anti-vaxxers, right? Because ultimately you can't force people to get the vaccine. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
personal choice, but it honestly just depends on how the situation is going to progress. And I feel like more now, because you're actually sort of seeing how people actually, all these anti-vaxxers who've gotten critically ill because they refuse to get the vaccine, that's sort of sending out a message to all of these people who are reluctant to get the vaccine initially as well, to actually go get the vaccine. Like, it's important, it's imperative that you get it. So that's sending out that kind of message as well, which I think is absolutely amazing, because I know that it's now slowly going to change as well. And that's just my thoughts on it. What about you? What do you think about that?
I think that, the little tidbit of, anti-vaxxers pretending to be vegan is, I think really a lot of like conflict is going to emerge from it, especially in the workplace. As I think, I don't know, but some workplaces are demanding, or they are hoping and ensuring and incentivizing their workers getting the vaccine. However, if you begin to pretend to be something you're not,
Yeah.
especially vegan, that is a lifestyle and that is a choice that you make, pure because of health reasons, because of religious reasons, things like that. However, if there could be, like, there is going to be a growing tension, especially in our community. A lot of people are going to be really upset. There are going to be I think a lot of repercussions from it. A lot of people are going to be in positions where they have to choose between actually getting their jobs, keeping down their jobs, and also their own personal freedom. And I think a lot of this conflict could be, resolved, as you were saying. This is partly due to the lack of education and the lack of condemnation from our government. A lot of, we've had the health secretary saying this and that, but what it really boils down to is the person that is in charge didn't take this seriously. So now why are we supposed to take this seriously? So in my opinion, I think that's just how it is. Boris Johnson never took it seriously. Donald Trump never took it seriously. So now, there is vaccine hesitancy. There is, growing movements, especially in the anti-vax centers. People drinking bleach.
I know.
Yeah, I think that was a time that is still continuing. And if we don't educate our leaders, then you can't educate the people.
Yeah, and when you just mentioned the bleach thing, I remembered I was telling this to my dad, right? I was telling him how, in addition to a pandemic, we now have to deal with misinformation and people just making really foolish decisions like drinking bleach, which has other health, that it can cause other problems for you, right?
Yeah.
So in addition to dealing with overflowing hospitals with regard to COVID, you now also have to deal with the ridiculous things that people do when they actually follow what some leaders actually say, right? However, it's time for us to head into a small break now, and we will be back to keep talking about how exactly the anti-vax movement started and why exactly it still exists and why there's a growing need to actually sort of battle, or rather tackle, that whole problem. All right, so until then, make sure you stay tuned, because right now we're going to head into a small break.
The valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday. And what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. What am I saving or investing for? Why am I doing it? When will I